An eye for an eye, the principle of justice that requires punishment equal in kind to the offense. An expression built on the belief that revenge restores balance, that pain can be evened out by inflicting it back. But in reality, vengeance rarely creates justice. It mutates it, deepens it, and often destroys the person seeking it. Park Chan-wook's Old Boy takes this idea and turns it inside out, revealing revenge as a force that corrodes rather than heals. And what makes this message resonate so powerfully is Park Chan-wook's masterful use of visual storytelling. The cinematography becomes a psychological mirror, reflecting Daisu's unraveling mind and the winding emptiness created by his pursuit of answers. Instead of portraying revenge as righteous, Old Boy shows it as a trap, one reinforced through every hue, composition, and visual rhythm. Park's choices turn the familiar phrase, an eye for an eye, into something far more unsettling, a cycle of destruction that consumes you long before it reaches the enemy. In phase 1 of Old Boy, everything we understand about Dae-soo's transformation is communicated through Park Chan-wook's visual design. Once kidnapped, he is placed in a makeshift prison, a small room with a bed, a TV, and a bathroom. The room is illuminated by sickly greens and dim, bluish shadows, creating a mood that feels sterile and unnatural. It feels as though we're watching him through a surveillance camera, heightening the feeling of being watched. The framing is incredibly tight and controlled. We often see him through confined and boxed-up framings, and repetition is key. We see the same colors, the same boxy framing style, whether we see him through a peephole or the rectangular shape of the TV. Even the room is an example of repetition. We only see Dae-soo in this room for phase 1. We start to feel trapped with him in a room we can't escape. Through these formal choices, color that drains life and framing that restricts it, phase 1 visualizes the psychological collapse that fuels Dae-soo's obsession with revenge. In phase 2 of Old Boy, starting with Dae-soo's release, the film's visual style shifts from the slow and repetitive shots of phase 1. Park Chan-wook uses shaky and fast camera movements to mirror Dae-soo's disorientation. He's technically free, but the rhythm of the shots show he's still mentally imprisoned. Soon after his release, he meets Mido, the love interest who later becomes much more than just a girlfriend. When in her apartment, the color green is still noticeable, referencing his entrapment. Every time we see the color green, we understand he isn't truly free. We often see Mido in the color red, red symbolizing love and passion, but also a warning, a sign of hidden truth. We follow him as he ventures in the city, in search for an explanation from anyone. At the same time, Park relies heavily on tracking shots to follow Dae-soo through streets, alleys, and cramped interiors. Phase 3 of Old Boy begins with the iconic hallway fight. What makes this scene so powerful isn't just the brutality, it's the way Park Chan-wook films it. The entire sequence unfolds in a single, side-scrolling tracking shot. No escape, no cutaway, and no relief. Dae-soo is trapped in the frame just as he's trapped in his cycle of revenge. The long take forces us to experience every struggle, every stumble, every moment of exhaustion, emphasizing how messy his desire for vengeance really is. After the hallway scene, the film's tone becomes darker and more deliberate. The editing slows down, letting violence hang in the air instead of rushing past it. The color palette leans into bruised blues and grimy yellows, creating a world that feels physically and morally rotting. Park uses close, suffocating framing to keep us locked inside Dae-soo's perspective. His rage narrows his vision, and the camera mirrors that tunnel. As Dae-soo punishes the people linked to his imprisonment, the violence becomes ritualistic, almost methodical. It's less about survival and more about proving something to himself. He's looking for a way to get back the 15 years he's lost. By the time he finally reaches the man responsible, the film has transformed violence from reaction into fury. Every stylistic choice prepares us for his growing need of finding the man who did this to him, his relentlessness pushing him towards obsession.
됐네요, 이제. 복수하고 싶어서가 아니라 왜 그랬는지 알고 싶어서 싸운다고 했죠? 이제 이유진이 못 쫓아오는 대로 도망갈 거죠, 우리?
못 끝날 것 같아. 이제 복수심이 아예 내 성격이 돼버렸어.
$100,000 더 드릴게요.
Phase 4 of Oldboy begins the moment Daisu finally meets Woojin, his captor. The film's visual language changes instantly. Their first encounter is washed in a cold blue light, a color that's been quietly following Daisu ever since he stepped back into the world. But here, that blue becomes something new. It's no longer just the color of trauma or confusion. With Woojin, blue becomes the color of control. The blue tone makes the room feel colder than the prison cell, because here the confinement is psychological, not physical. Even in flashbacks, the camera shakes and turns, showing Daisu's confusion and difficulty finding the truth. Long shots of people running and Daisu chasing them, symbolizing his chase for revenge and determination. Towards the end of Phase 4, the color green resurfaces yet again. When Woojin shows Daisu the green picture book, its hue immediately recalls the sickly green of the cell walls where he spent 15 years. It visually links the two chapters of his suffering, the physical imprisonment from his captor's past, and the emotional imprisonment he's about to enter. That green becomes a bridge between the old trauma and the new revelation, proving that Woojin has been orchestrating Daisu's release long before this moment. As the truth unfolds, Park Chan-wook gradually alters the framing to expose the growing power imbalance. At first, both men share the frame, but as Woojin tightens his psychological grip, Daisu is shown from farther and farther away. Wide shots make him smaller inside enormous, empty rooms, making him look like a child lost in an adult's world. We also see split screens playing two different realities. As we hear Woojin's story, Daisu discovers how his fate has been decided by Woojin all along.
내가 너희 누이한테 정말 죽을 죄를 졌다. 그리고 너한테도 정말 잘못했다. 그러니까
Phase 5 of Oldboy, the last stage of vengeance, is truly the breaking point. The stage where vengeance no longer even feels like a goal. Daisu's lost all need for revenge. He seeks forgiveness. He seeks another chance. It becomes pure submission. Daisu's submission is expressed most violently through his own body. When he cuts out his tongue, the camera staggers and it wavers, almost mirroring his panic. The shaky framing reflects a man who has lost every piece of identity. This moment is the ultimate reversal of power. Daisu had spent the entire film trying to speak, to explain, to demand answers. Now, he willingly destroys the very tool that connects him with the truth. One of the most important moments in Phase 5 is the snow scene, which visually captures Daisu's complete submission. After the psychological devastation, the film shifts into a quiet, almost dreamlike atmosphere. The snowfall creates a stark contrast to the brutality that came before, soft, white, and gentle. But Park Chan-wook uses this softness ironically. The snow doesn't cleanse anything. It only highlights how empty Daisu has become. He'll try anything to erase his memory, wishing he had never started this cycle. Park Chan-wook uses Oldboy to show that vengeance didn't grant justice or closure. It led Daisu to willingly surrender his voice, his dignity, and ultimately his sense of self. By the time we reach the final scene, the film has made one thing brutally clear. Submission, not triumph, is the final destination of his revenge.
사랑해요.